Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavansha Virupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tan Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Paridana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanitamstra. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Yopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Krupa Sindhu Bhevacha Atitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, welcome to this continued study of Bhagavad Gita. So, today we are discussing chapter 4, and we're going to be discussing the second section of chapter 4, verses 13 through 19. So we have been starting each of these sessions recently with this yoga ladder, and as we have been discussing, one makes progress towards the top end of the yoga ladder by increasing one's purification of material desires and acquiring knowledge. So we'll see that the knowledge we've been talking about in this chapter is called transcendental knowledge, and purification of desires Krishna is going to establish today as the measure of us having knowledge, actually. So the link between the two is very nicely established. So beginning in chapter 4, we'll start with verse number 13, a very famous verse in which Krishna establishes that he is the creator of our Varnashram Dharma system. Right? So we see here, the verse says, according to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I'm yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. So in chapter 3, Krishna has recommended karma yoga as this best purificatory process so that one can self-realize. And this purification happens and leads to both this transcendental knowledge. And this transcendental knowledge is knowledge of who am I, who is Krishna, and what is our relationship. When we know these three things, who am I, who is Krishna, and what is my relationship, then actually everything becomes clear. We know how to act. We know what actions to do. We know how to live. We know what the goal of our life is. And one achieves perfect happiness. So it is actually the complete summation of knowledge. Because with that, one can achieve all that is to be achieved. And that's what we're looking for, right? We have so much knowledge about so many different topics. And the goal of knowledge is to acquire an understanding of how to manipulate, change some situation to achieve a desired outcome. Right? So, in material knowledge, we're trying to understand how to rearrange matter. How do I rearrange matter in such a way that I can create an iPhone that allows me to communicate? Right? How can I rearrange matter to build me a fast sports car? Or how can I rearrange matter to have a nice home? Like, these are all things of knowledge to achieve some happiness. But the real knowledge that if we understand who am I, who is Krishna, and what is my relationship, then from there, one actually achieves the goal of all knowledge. And that is perfection of life, happiness. So in this section, Krishna is answering, and he started from the last verse we discussed last week, verse 12. Why don't everyone just worship Krishna? It's so simple, right? Why don't we all just worship Krishna? And then the question has become, well, if one doesn't, is it he who's deciding who does and who does not? Who is a spiritualist? Who is an atheist? Does he pick who makes progress quickly in devotional service and who does not? Who climbs this yoga ladder? Who fails? Is he partial in picking favorites? So in this way, that question may come up. So he has told us now that we are not the doer already in the 3rd chapter. Right? He says, Prakute Prikriyamanani Gunai Karmani Sarvashahan Karavi Mudatma Kartahamiti Manyate. He says, I am not the doer. He's telling us, your spirit soul is not the doer. Right? So now, then, is it he that's the doer? Is he the doer of everything? Is he the one giving us the ability to worship Krishna? Right? If he's the supreme controller, is he orchestrating everything on our behalf? So that question and series of questions we're going to answer in this section, and it starts with this verse where Krishna says, I am the undo. I am not the doer. Or he says it exactly, that I am yet the non-doer, to be precise. So he is saying that he is not the doer. But he also said that we are not the doer. Then who is the doer? And so this introduces our concept of minute independence, right? So first let's establish this varnashram system, right? So what is this varnashram system? This varnashram system, it is a way to organize society for the purpose, the exclusive purpose, of elevating our consciousness towards self-realization. And how does this work? Well, we acquire work or a nature according to our interaction with the modes of nature. Based on what we've done in the past, we develop certain qualities, certain tendencies. So Krishna is not picking, oh, you'll be a Brahmana, you'll be a Shudra, you'll be of this character, you'll be of this character. That nature and character is acquired by us by our own past activities. We acquire it from the modes, who are ultimately controlled by Krishna, but it is not forced upon us in the sense that it is done arbitrarily. No, it is based on our past activity. So our current situation is based on our past actions. That is karma. So Krishna is not picking and choosing. Right? And so who is a spiritualist and who is an atheist is based on our situation. So Krishna says that I am, you should know that I am yet the non-doer here. So now he has told us in the 11th verse, Ye tamam prapadyante. Krishna is reciprocating based on our actions. Right? So that's the proof. Again, he reciprocates based on our activities. So it is not due to, Krishna doesn't pick. It is based simply on the degree of our surrender to Krishna. He reciprocates. Both Krishna and Guru do the same thing. So then how does the varnashram system work? When we work according to our nature, according to our tendencies, then one can be peacefully situated. And thus, when one is peacefully situated, one can then take to the ultimate purpose of life. Right? Just like if one has some work to do in the house and they have some big list of projects, well, if one is feeling very hungry or very sleepy, then that work will not get done nicely. But if one is properly fed and properly rested, then one can take to the next level of activities. So this Varnashram system is like that. It creates the environment for one to come to the knowledge of who am I, who is Krishna, and what is my relationship. So that is the purpose of this. Now Krishna makes a very interesting point here, that he says he is unchangeable. And so what does he mean by unchangeable? That's actually an inconceivable idea for us. Why? Because every moment we are changing, right? Our body has cells that are dying and regrowing. So every millisecond, our body is changing. It's never constant. So this unchangeable is difficult for us to contemplate. Whatever I am at this moment, by the time I can finish that thought, it is already changed. But Krishna, he's giving things to us. He's giving based on our actions. But how is it that he remains unchanged? Just like, every activity we do, we change. We go to some, restaurant for foodstuffs, a Govinda's, of course. And we go, well, immediately we are changed. Because we have now less money than we had before, and we have a full belly. So there is an interaction and there is a change. Right? Someone, comes and cleans our house. Well, the house is clean and our pocketbooks are a little bit light. Or a friend comes to our home. We gain some experiences and we lose some time. So this is a nature of the conditioned soul in the material world, that we are constantly being changed. But Krishna is unchanged in his reciprocation with us. Meaning he gives, but he remains the complete whole. As we know, he is never depleted. But also his emotions are not changed. And he doesn't, it indicates that he is completely aloof from this reciprocation. Though it is under his control, he is not engaged in the ins and outs of that activity. And so this unchangeable means he's basically impartial. He does not pick winners and losers. It happens by the laws of nature that he has created. And so he does not get excitement or despair, except for the fact that he's always longing for the association of his lost children. But the interactions, this reciprocation happens, we can say, almost by itself in some ways. Although it is happening directly under the control of Krishna, because he is the supreme controller, the cause of all causes. Right? So as the creator of this system, he is the ultimate doer, but here he is saying, I am the non-doer and unchangeable. So that's the indication that it happens without Krishna's change of mood or consciousness. He is equipped. Everything is happening based on the exact supreme laws that he has created. Right? So just like, the king may go out and his tax collectors may be encountering different activities and collecting taxes. Right? So the tax collector's activities of success or struggle, ultimately the king is not affected. It is happening separate from his own existence. He is enjoying in his palace, but still the tax collector is carrying out on behalf of the king. So like that, the modes of nature are carrying out on behalf of Krishna, but he remains unchanged. So just wanted to emphasize that point a little bit. So now Krishna being the supreme controller, we know not even a blade of grass can sway in the wind without his control. So then doesn't that make him responsible for our actions? Isn't it his fault that I am attached to so many sinful activities? If he is the ultimate controller, then he should be responsible, right? So Krishna has already told me, I am not the doer. then he must be the doer. But here he says, no, I am the non-doer. So he is also. So we have to understand how this is there. So Krishna says we are not the doer to smash our ego. But then he says he is not the doer to indicate that we ultimately have responsibility because Krishna is reciprocating according to our desire. So he is the ultimate doer in the role of sanctioning every activity. He is the ultimate cause of all causes. Nothing happens without Krishna's sanction. But he sanctions and reciprocates impartially based on the jiva's desire. So he allows us to have this minute independence to express our desires, and he fulfills our desires based on our qualification. Right? So the independence we have is very minute in that we desire. But because of that desire being the catalyst, the instigate action, we thus have responsibility. Because Krishna does not force anything upon us. We express our desire, and based on our qualification, he sanctions or not. So yes, to smash our ego, we are not the doer. If I want to move my hand, I cannot move my hand. All I can do is express my desire to move my hand. Krishna will sanction. Am I qualified to move my hand? If so, he will direct the modes of nature, like a puppeteer, to move my hand. So that is the ego smashing part of I am not the doer. But Krishna is saying he is not forcing us to move our hand. It is based on our desire. So this is why he establishes these two important principles, these two angles of vision. And so ultimately, we must understand we are responsible for our actions. And Krishna is just sanctioning impartially. Okay? And so this is leading us to understand how to work. Because we must be very careful in choosing our work. What to do. What action should I pursue? And that is the ultimate discussion we're going to have in today's section, is how to choose the action, why it's important. But the why it's important is established here. Because we have responsibility for our actions. So, but don't think that I control my own destiny. So while I have responsibility, I have very limited role, but it is the key role in the decision factor. Right? So now, how Krishna is the enabler of everything, we see in the purport to 13 and 14. So we'll just discuss it here. Prabhupada is giving an example of the rains. We can plant the fields and cultivate the fields, but if the rains come, then only crop will grow. If the rains do not come, no matter how much we cultivate the fields, nothing will grow. But if the rains come and we don't cultivate the field, no crops will come. So the rain is not the exclusive cause of the crops, but it is the ultimate cause. So similarly, Krishna is not the exclusive cause, but he is the ultimate. So just another example. Right? And so Krishna, the very important point now, is that Krishna is giving us all the facilities for us to serve. And either we serve him or we serve our senses. And that choice, that decision is ours. But Krishna is providing all the facilities, 100% of the facilities. But the choice of whom to serve is ours, and thus we are responsible for the outcomes of our choice. Right? And Prabhupada gives the example of the owner of the establishment is not responsible for the behavior of the customers. So the owner of this establishment, the material world, Krishna, provides all the facilities, but then we have to decide, right? The restaurant is not the cause of us being fat. It is our choice, or unhealthy is our choice, right? The banks were not the cause of the financial crisis. It was our desire to acquire more than we had. Policeman is not the cause of the prisoner doing the crime, but the policeman is the cause of the prisoner going to jail. But the policeman was just reacting based on the activities of the individual. So again, many different angles to see this same point, that Krishna is impartially sanctioning to our desires. And why does Krishna give us all these facilities in the first place? It would be easier if we only had mridangas and kartals and books. Because we had desire to try to enjoy material nature. So Krishna is reciprocating. Ye tamam prapadyante tam statavya bhajamyaham. We have desire to enjoy the material world. Krishna will provide those facilities. Because he is going to reciprocate according to our desire. So the presence of these things in the material world are only due to our own creation, our own desire. So this is the link Krishna is making in this verse. This is a very important, concept of, he is not the doer. We are not the independent doer. That is the summary of what we can say. Krishna, though, sanctions everything we do based on our desire and qualification. Okay? So just a few different ways to look at that. So now Krishna says in 14, there is no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. One who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled in the fruitive reactions of work. So Krishna is now telling us the benefit of knowing how Krishna works. Right? He says, there's no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for fruits of actions. So one who knows this also does not become entangled. Right? So what is the meaning of there is no work that affects me, nor do I aspire the fruits of action? The meaning here is that Krishna is self-satisfied. He does not need to work to gain anything. He has unlimited Lakshmi Devis and devotees in the spiritual world serving him. He has all the facilities. We have to do work to attempt to find some happiness. Why do we go to the office? To acquire some income, so that I can acquire certain means of so-called material happiness. Of course, the materialist is, all of you are going to work to serve Krishna. But the common understanding is, so we do work to get something. But Krishna does not have to endeavor to find happiness. He is self-satisfied. He has everything at his disposal. Right? So thus we attach to the work because the result gives us something we need or want. But Krishna has no need or want. And thus he says, there is no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. He already has everything. Right? It's like the very, very rich person. He doesn't have to work. He has everything. Right? So in that way, Krishna is telling now Arjuna that you should also do the same. Be unattached. Because he says, one who understands this truth also does not become entangled. So this is important to understand that Krishna is setting this same example. Because I am unattached, you should also remain unattached. You are my part and parcel. Right? Just like father will instruct child, I am following the laws of the land, you should also follow the laws of the land. Like that, Krishna is showing us the example. Do not become entangled. Right? Now, when Krishna comes to the material world and does activities, how is he unaffected? Because he is transcendental to all material affairs. Right? He has no action and reactions, no material desires. So is Krishna, part of the Varnashram system? Is he a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya? No, he is none of them. Because he is transcendental. This, Chaturvarnyam, this Varnashram system, it is a material establishment. So though he is the creator, he has nothing to do with it. Right? He created a system, but he is transcendental to it. So he may perform various duties, but it is just to show us. Because he is already purified. The purpose of doing these prescribed duties is to purify, but he is already transcended. He does not need this system to elevate himself. And Srila Prabhupada makes this point very importantly in the purport. Right? So, and then Prabhupada says the devotee himself is also unaffected by the varnashram system because he is transcendental, or she is transcendental to the material. Once one becomes self-realized, then they also transcend. They become a Vaishnava, which is beyond even a Brahmana. And there was lots of battles, particularly Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, on this idea of a Vaishnava being superior to a Brahmana. Right? So, this is important to remember that Krishna transcends, and also his devotee transcends these systems. And thus there is no work to be done, nor any effect of the material world. So again, finally, Krishna is telling us this because when one knows this about Krishna, they also avoid becoming entangled. Right? So he is self-realized and thus does a karma, detached action for the pleasure of Krishna. That is the conclusion of having this knowledge. Now, the performance of duties. Krishna says in 15, all the liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding of my transcendental nature. Therefore, you should perform your duty following in their footsteps. So what should Arjuna do? Fight without the desire for the fruit, having transcendental knowledge of the nature of Krishna. Knowing that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, the doer, we are his part and parcel, thus we should do our activity in knowledge of that, in service of the whole. It will purify the heart of all the material desires, and it will lead others, showing a good example. So Prabhupada says, this in the purport, that those who are full of dirty things can take to the line of Krishna consciousness for a gradual cleansing process. And those who are already cleansed may continue so that others may follow. I was just paraphrasing. But that's what Srila Prabhupada establishes just a few lines into this purport to the 15th verse. So, and Krishna here is referencing the liberated souls in ancient times. Where do you know? He spoke this millions of years ago to Vivasvan, who spoke it to Manu, who spoke it to Ikshvaku. All of them have done the same thing. And so Krishna is telling Arjuna, you should follow in their footsteps. And Prabhupada makes the important point here that, this idea of sitting idle and making a show of Krishna consciousness is not recommended. Right? Arjuna wanted to retire, but Krishna is telling Arjuna, no, you work. So when we have understanding we are not the doer, it should not lead to laziness. Oh, I have nothing to gain, I'll not do it. Instead, one knows, wait, Krishna has given me some ability, some facilities. I should use it in the utmost sincerity for the service of Krishna. Whatever facilities I have, let me use them for Krishna. So this is the important understanding of how Krishna is establishing, and this important point, following in their footsteps. So Krishna is constantly telling us, particularly in this chapter, to follow in the footsteps. The great saintly kings are following. The great liberated souls in the ancient times are following. And Krishna is going to say in the 34th verse of this chapter, you follow the spiritual master. So this topic, Krishna is telling Arjuna over and over and over again, and ultimately Arjuna is going to say, I am prepared to follow. And that is the goal of all of us, to come to that realization. So now the 16th verse, from here until verse 24, Krishna is going to now speak about action and inaction. And this is an important topic of what is action and what is inaction. And a very confusing topic. And Krishna says now in the 16th verse, Even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. Now I shall explain to you what action is, knowing with which you shall be liberated from all misfortune. Now, what an amazing statement Krishna is making here. Knowing which you shall be liberated from all misfortune. See, knowledge is the key to being free from all misfortune. When we know that something is dangerous for us, then we can react accordingly. Right now, there is so much misfortune out because nobody knows who has this virus. Because the testing does not reveal. But imagine if every single person instantly could be tested and we knew who had this knowledge, who had this virus. That knowledge would remove all our fear. Oh, I can associate with you because you don't have it. You can associate with me. See my badge? I don't have it. Great. Knowledge, in this very simple example, can relieve this immediate shutdown requirement. But Krishna is saying that this knowledge about action, what action really is, it can relieve all misfortune, not just a temporary virus, but all misfortune. So knowledge is always the key to success. Because once we know, then we can shape our activities accordingly. Right? So if I know what is action and inaction, then I'll know how to act in a way to avoid misery and suffering. Sometimes we do things and we don't know that this is causing so much problems. But if then we become aware, oh, eating this food stuff is causing, difficulties in your body. Oh, I didn't know. Then I can stop. So this knowledge is key. Now, sometimes we don't like to hear that knowledge, right? Oh, I like to eat these sweets. I like them. Yes, but it's bad for you. And then we're dealt with the difficult dilemma, what to do, right? But if we have full faith in this knowledge, then actually it becomes very easy, right? If I have absolute faith, no, this is going to kill me, then I'll avoid it. But the knowledge at least is the key to the path to avoiding this misfortune. So it guides our actions. If the knowledge we've acquired doesn't guide our actions, then we say it's not realized knowledge. So we've acquired it, but we still do the other thing, then that knowledge has not yet had value. So Krishna is saying, I'm going to explain to you, and he's going to spend several verses on it. Because why? Even the intelligent struggle to get it. What is the difficulty? Well, the difficulty is, we as conditioned souls have two challenges. One, we have ego. And two, we have a nature that we've acquired from so many past births. So the action that seems to give us pleasure is leading to misery. It seems great, eat, drink, and be merry. But the merry peace never comes. Enjoying palatial homes and enjoying your senses to nth degree. So we don't know how to avoid this misfortune. What actions? We see someone going to the office and don't know. Is that devotional service? Don't know. We see somebody going to the temple or living in the temple. Is that devotional service? We don't know. Right? Someone living in a cave and meditating. What is the best? What am I supposed to do? How to act? So, Krishna is now going to tell Arjuna, having this knowledge is very important, but it's also very difficult to acquire. So what does Srila Prabhupada recommend in this purport? He recommends very in detail. he gets right to the point that one has to follow the leadership of authorized persons who are in a line of disciplic succession. This is the opening line to the second paragraph. I'll read it again. To act in Krishna consciousness, one has to follow the leadership of authorized persons who are in a line of disciplic succession, as explained in the beginning of this chapter. Right? So Krishna has already explained. He has established his disciplic succession. When it is broken, he comes back to re-establish it. Because this understanding of how to act is not so easy, even for the most intelligent. So the guru is the one who will guide in how to act, so that one will not become bewildered. So this idea, must manifest in our heart, and then it will become realized that one can avoid all misfortune. And that's why Krishna is going to conclude in this, towards the end of this chapter, surrender to Guru. Okay? Because the only real beneficial action is Krishna consciousness. The only activity that is really going to help us is Krishna consciousness. All other activity results in misery. All other activity. Even the pious fruitive activities ultimately lead to misery. So the only real beneficial action is Krishna consciousness. And how to know this? We must surrender to Guru to guide us in what action is good for us, and thus will become liberated from all misfortune. So Krishna is giving a great benediction to Arjuna and all of us to reveal this. And so now we'll discuss the different types of action. What are our choices in activities we can do? So Krishna says in the 17th verse, the intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what action is, what forbidden action is, and what inaction is. Now, this is the second time Krishna is saying, is it easy to know what to do and what not to do? It's not easy. It's difficult to understand. He says in this verse, or he says very hard to understand. In the prior verse, even the intelligent are bewildered. So this is a natural reaction. So what are the three types of action? We have karma. Those are what we call karma kanda. Regulated sense enjoyment. Do these yagyas to acquire wealth, health, power, some pious activities. But what is the result? Still, birth, death, old age, and disease. There is bondage. Because the goal is one's own sense gratification. So option 1 is karma kanda. Option 2, vikarma. Unregulated sense enjoyment. Karma is regulated sense enjoyment. Vikarma is, I do what I want. Not what the Vedas say. I do what I want. And that is the complete misuse of our independence. And that results also in suffering. And the third option is akarma. To work for the pleasure of Krishna. Detached action. What we've been speaking about since the beginning of chapter 3 and parts of chapter 2, detached activity. Right? And what happens when one works detached from the fruits? No reaction. So Prabhupada speaks in the purport here that, the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita is to get us to work in this way, to work only for Krishna's pleasure. And we'll do this only when we have knowledge. Why I'll work for Krishna? Only when I know I am his part and parcel. And actually, working in this way is my eternal occupation. That is the eternal activity that gives me happiness. To serve the whole is the duty of the part. So it all starts with knowing me, knowing Krishna, and the relationship. So this is the key knowledge. Otherwise, the activities will lead to misery. I'll pursue karma or vikarma. So when we know Krishna, then we'll naturally detach from the result. And unless we know Krishna, it is very hard to know what to do. What is best for us? How to live our life? Where to find happiness? So, again, Prabhupada continues to emphasize, where to learn this? From Parampara. Because even, and Prabhupada says, in the purport here, in the statement, he says, just looking for it, otherwise, even the most intelligent persons will be bewildered. So our role is to know what to do. We must follow the instructions. Otherwise, we'll constantly be bewildered. And don't be worried that we're bewildered. It happens to even the most intelligent of persons, Krishna is saying. It's very difficult to understand. Now in the 18th verse, we get to this riddle. Right? What is the difference between these different activities? Right? So one who sees inaction in action, and action in inaction, is intelligent among men. And he is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. So this one who sees inaction in action. So what is inaction in action? That's devotional service. One does so many activities, but there is no reaction. They're not bound by the results. Why? Because they're working detached from the fruits. They're working for Krishna's pleasure. So this way, this activity brings no reactions and thus looks like inaction. The example is given of the soldier. Srila Prabhupada would give the example of the soldier. When the soldier trained by the government is shooting bullets provided by the government, the gun provided by the government, under the direction of the government, when that soldier is shooting bullets and killing the enemy, there is no reaction. But as soon as that soldier begins to shoot bullets, the same bullets, with the same gun, with the same training from the government, as soon as that soldier begins to shoot bullets on their own desires and gets into a dispute with their neighbor, then that same government will imprison that person. Right? And what's the difference? Both were shooting bullets, but one was under the instruction and one was under one's own desire. So as soon as one works according to the instructions of Krishna in a detached way, there is no reaction. So one who knows this sees inaction. Yes, they are doing so many activities, but they are accruing no results. And what is action in inaction? One who tries to be inactive by avoiding matter. Thinks, I'm creating no reactions. But actually, in that inaction, there is still activity. One has to breathe. One has to eat. One has to walk. And for those activities, there will be some karma, some reactions. Unless one is working for Krishna. So one who tries to be inactive is still acquiring some sin. Krishna said in the 3rd chapter, if you eat an apple, but you don't offer it to Krishna, you're eating sin. So one has to have knowledge of how to make that activity reactionless. And how to make it reactionless? By knowing Krishna. So the person who tries to be inactive, they're devoid of knowledge of how to work in a detached manner. They tiptoe around the world trying to avoid, but everything they're doing is still binding because they don't know how to use matter in Krishna's service. And that is actually the easier process than tiptoeing around the world. Just use everything you have around you, but use it in Krishna's service. And thus one will not become bound. So this is action in inaction and action in inaction. This is the riddle, but Krishna is explaining it to us. Now we get to the question of full knowledge. What is full knowledge? Harvard degrees, IIT degrees, Stanford degrees. Is that full knowledge? Krishna is telling us now. One who is understood to be in full knowledge, one is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every endeavor is devoid of desire for sense gratification. He is said by sages to be a worker for whom the reactions of work have been burned up by the fire of perfect knowledge. So when are we in full knowledge? Not after that IIT or Harvard or Oxford, Berkeley, Caltech, Stanford degree. No, it is based on, or the University of Michigan degree for some of that are on this call, including myself. We are in knowledge when we know about Krishna, our relationship with him, without doubt, so that the result is we are 100% focused on serving him, and thus, by this default then, there is no desire for material sense enjoyment. When one no longer desires stale old chapatis because they are enjoying hot, fluffy, cholesterol-free puris. When one knows Krishna and the sweet, loving exchanges and unlimited bliss of Krishna consciousness, then why one would want to experience the stale and always misery-filled material affairs? So, one is understood to be in full knowledge, which means, what is the proof one has knowledge? Not, how many verses they have memorized, how many stories they can tell, how much they read. That is not the proof. The proof is that they are 100% devoid of sense gratification desires. Because the knowledge leads to a change of heart, free from self-desires and full of desires to please Krishna. So what does knowledge do, as Krishna says here? It burns up the reactions. By the fire of knowledge, all of our reactions are burned up. By bhakti, one burns so many sinful reactions. So the knowledge is the critical aspect. Again, we see the importance of knowledge in guiding our actions. What to do? What should we do? Well, unless I have this information, I won't know. But as soon as I know Krishna, I know me, and I know my relationship, again, these three things, then everything becomes very clear. And one can then acquire perfect happiness and perfect bliss, and have none of the lesser desires. But as Krishna has emphasized in this section, it's not so easy to know what to do and what not to do. And thus, the Guru guides one in what to do. And one has to, rip out one's past conditioning. And when one does, then one truly becomes free from all misfortune, as Krishna told us in the 16th verse. Then the real bliss is obtained in eternal service to Krishna. But sometimes there's an intermediate feeling of loss or despair. I cannot eat, these foodstuffs. I cannot go and try to intoxicate myself. Right? A materially attached person has to give up certain activities. But the gain is extraordinary and beyond compare, because one gains the bliss of Krishna consciousness, which provides unlimited eternal happiness. So this is the details of action and inaction that Krishna began discussing from verse 16. And next week we'll continue discussing those. So just wanted to give a quick summary of chapter 4. So in the first 3 verses, Krishna has described how this knowledge is received. It is received through parampara. Evam parampara praptim. Imam rajarsho viduhu sakala neha mahata yoga nashta parantapa. So this knowledge is received through parampara. And what knowledge Krishna is giving? Being asked by Arjuna for our benefit, that Krishna's form is transcendental. His appearance is transcendental. He does not come under the influence of material nature. He comes when he wants, where he wants, to whom he wants. And his body is non-different from he himself. He is fully spiritual. Right? So he gave that knowledge about himself, and why he appears, he gave. Ultimately we know, to please his devotees, to enjoy with his devotees. And what is the benefit of knowing about Krishna's form and his appearance? One becomes free from all anxieties of material life. One becomes liberated. Janma karma chamedi vyam evam yoveti tatvaha tatva deham punarjanma naiti mam iti sorjana. One becomes liberated just knowing these 2 things. Very powerful knowledge, right? Then Krishna began discussing from yetamam prapadyante, this surrender, the different activities and choices, action and inaction. And he's spending quite a few verses, right? 14 verses to discuss this, because it's an intricate topic, not so easy for us to understand, but Krishna and Guru and the mercy Srila Prabhupada are making it very easy for us to understand. Just do Krishna consciousness under guidance and everything is sublime. Next week we'll begin discussing this importance of yajna, sacrifice. And Krishna will be talking about sacrifices and ultimately why one should do. And then finally, Krishna, in the final section of this chapter, 34 through 42, will discuss the glories of transcendental knowledge. So we have some indication one will be free from misfortune, but then Krishna is going to conclude this chapter by saying, approach the spiritual master and inquire from him, and what that knowledge will do and how it will free one from all anxieties and bestow great happiness. So Krishna will glorify this transcendental knowledge at the end of this chapter. So that is just the structure. And again, this chapter sits after discussing Nishkam Karma Yoga, in which we knew knowledge was the key to doing detached action, and now we're getting a full chapter of transcendental knowledge. So just a little bit of context for the flow of this section of Bhagavad Gita. So so we'll end here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Any questions or comments, discussion today?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Dhanvads.
Prabhuji, can you please tell us a little bit more about the 3, the karma, vikarma, and akarma? And can you please give a simple example of like an action? What is karma?
Yeah.
What would be karma and what would be akarma?
Yeah. So, and it's I'm glad you're asking for an example, because we sometimes confuse, karma with actually akarma. So, karma means regulated sense enjoyment. Regulated by what? Regulated by Shastra. What Shastra? The karma kanda yajnas, sacrifices contained within the Vedas. So, the motive for karma, the activity, is to acquire some material happiness. But one does it in a regulated way, meaning, Krishna is given that you worship this demigod for some material boon. So that is an activity within karma. So doing some, yajna for some material benediction. Another example, would be, which is not, and it is following the pious actions enjoined, right? So to be sort of generally pious, working in a in the mode of goodness. Okay, giving charities and doing humanitarian efforts, that can also be considered within this. So what is the result of that? One gets good karma, good pious credits, and that will get one a higher birth, more wealth, more fame. But ultimately, we know in knowledge that it'll still lead to more birth, death, old age, and disease. So that is karma. What is vikarma? I'll do what I want. If I want to slit the throat of an animal to satisfy my tongue, I'll do it. If I want to, plunder somebody's riches so that I can enjoy them, I'll do it. Who are you to tell me what to do? So I do what I want. It is unregulated sense enjoyment. So the motive of both is the same, to enjoy their senses. But one does in a regulated way, whereas in vikarma, one does whatever I want. So Prabhupada kind of speaks about both of them together in the purport, because he says they both lead to the same result, which is suffering. Maybe one has more suffering than the other, but ultimately they lead to the same result. So karma, regulated sense enjoyment; vikarma, unregulated, doing different yagyas, doing different pious activities, that is all within karma. Vikarma is I do what I want, and perform so many sinful activities. So, and the result there is extreme suffering. And then akarma. Akarma means basically devotional service. I work for Krishna. So I'm not working for my own sense enjoyment. I am working for Krishna's enjoyment. So I work detached from the fruits. I don't want the fruits. And thus there's no reaction. So means no. There's no reaction. Akarma. Because when I work for Krishna, Krishna has the reactions. Just like the soldier working for the government has no consequences of their killing, because it's working for the government. Similarly, when we work for Krishna, Krishna takes all the reactions. There's no karma associated with that. Kind of a simple example. I am eating an apple. Well, an apple is a living entity. So there's karma associated with eating the apple. But if I offer that apple to Krishna, now there is no karma for me. No reactions. Not only is there no reaction, there is great benefit. That is also devotional service. I'm driving my car. I'm driving to the temple. How many living entities I'm killing in my car? Many. There's reactions for that. But now I'm working for Krishna. Thus, those reactions are nullified because I'm working for Krishna. I'm going to the office, same thing. So many different activities, right? So now one truly has to in consciousness be working for Krishna. I can't just say, I'm working for Krishna, he takes my karma, I can do whatever I want. No, one has to understand it. So those are the three and some examples. So, is that okay?
Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you, Prabhuji. It was very wonderful class.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna. Hare Krishna. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji. Yes.
Prabhuji, if you can tell a little bit more, Brahmana by birth, which you are saying that Vaishnava is superior than Brahmana, because the understanding of what I've been having all through, I don't even want to say limited, but I know Brahmana means by birth.
Yeah.
But here the things are Brahmana is by quality. So
Yeah.
Can you give some insight on this?
Yeah. So the Varnashram system is always based on qualities. It is never based on birthright. But that is the misconstrued and misapplied principles that have been for all various reasons. the one's varna is based on the qualities one has. Now, in the Prabhupada would give the example that if you are born the son of a doctor, does that make you a doctor? No. You have to qualify to become a doctor. But now being born the son of a doctor can very much increase your chances of becoming a doctor because you're following in their footsteps. So one born in a Brahminical family has the higher potential to follow those Brahminical qualities because from childhood they'll be trained in those Brahminical qualities. So birthright gives an initial starting position to acquire and develop those qualities as Brahmana. But the qualities is what determines one's Varna, not birth. So birth is a starting point, but not the end point. So if one is born in a Brahmana family, but is performing non-Brahminical activities, according to the Krishna, according to the system he created, that is not a Brahmana. Not according to, any other social norms or, political norms. No, according to the creator of the system. So birth is a important starting point, but the qualities must manifest in order to be that position. One who comes to Krishna consciousness, serving Krishna as the root cause of everything, acquires the qualities that allows them to transcend and come to the status of Vaishnava. And that, again, happens by the manifestation of the qualities of the devotee. Acting like a devotee doesn't mean one is a devotee. One must have the qualities that Krishna has described. In the 12th chapter, he describes very sweetly the qualities of the devotees that are very pleasing to him. And he says, he gives all these qualities, beautiful 4 or 5 verses, explaining who is very dear to him. So it's always, our position is going to be based on the qualities we have, not by any other designation. Sometimes in Krishna consciousness, being in Krishna consciousness for periods of time or different statuses, this is initiated, not initiated, that doesn't designate one's position. What designates one's position is the qualities that one has acquired. And the qualities they have discarded. The desires for sense enjoyment, as Krishna has said here, is indicative, the test of one who has knowledge. That is the test of knowledge. Not how many verses one's memorized or how much Shastra one can explain. That is not relevant. So it's always based on that. Is that okay, Prabhu?
Yeah, Prabhu. So that means a Brahmana should never get into a material education, right? He should live only with the Vedic education to get those qualities.
What is the purpose of material education?
Yeah,
The Brahmana's role in Varnashram Dharma is to guide the rest of society in the process of devotional service. So the Brahmana, again in our perfect Varnashram system, they don't earn any income. The only ones who earn income are the Vaishyas. And they support through charity the needs of the Brahmanas. So yes, the Brahmanas spend their time understanding Shastra, understanding how to perfectly apply Shastra in the material world to guide those. And that's why the great kings, where did they get their authority to rule? Who were their cabinet? They were the Brahmanas, the sages. They were the ones guiding what to do, what not to do. When Durvasa Muni was deciding what to do, break his fast or not break his fast, who did he consult? Ambarish Maharaj. When Durvasa Muni came. When Ambarish Maharaj was going to break it, who did he consult? He's the king. He consulted the Brahmanas. Well, if the Brahmanas went to Harvard for their education, what they would tell him? Who is this person? Yes. But in today's world, these designations are not, really applied. So we should understand, regardless of birth, we are all Shudras. But by the process and mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Prabhupada, one can very quickly elevate to the status of Vaishnava. But it is not to be a status. Oh, I want to be elevated. No. Because I want to try to please Krishna. For the pleasure of Krishna, one can come to the platform of Vaishnava. Not for the pleasure of one's own ego or feeling of self-worth. Is that okay, Prabhu? Thank you. Thank you. Nice questions. Anything else?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I just want some clarification on that 4.16 verse.
Okay.
What I understood, I'm just trying to tell you, if you can, something I missed out. Basically, you talked about that knowledge is a key, right? That's the main thing, to be free from all the misfortune and all that. And then basically, but even if you have knowledge, till that knowledge is put into practice and realized, that is of no use, correct? And then how we will use it as a realized knowledge is by following the Guru's instructions. Am I correct in that understanding? Or
yeah, maybe just a minor tweak, two minor tweaks. One, the knowledge, if it's not applied, I don't want to say it has no use, but it has limited use, right? Because at least it's the first step to leading to a changed heart. But it has value, full value, once it leads to a changed activity. And the difficulty that's being presented here is that our knowledge is difficult to understand the intricacies, and so the Guru can guide us in what to do. And the fully surrendered disciple, like Arjuna, he doesn't need 17 chapters of Bhagavad Gita to get him to say, Krishe Vachanam Tava. Doesn't need knowledge. Just needs, know one thing. Krishna is my well-wisher. Krishna is my best friend. And whatever he tells me, I know is factually best for me. And that's sufficient to act with faith. That's sufficient. Because he has faith in that. Right? But why Krishna has bestowed intelligence upon us in the human form of life? Because in order to break the false ego, we need more proof, more evidence, more information. Right? The gopis of Vrindavan had very little shastric knowledge. Why? They didn't need it. They had pure love of Krishna, the conclusion of shastric knowledge. They didn't need it. So the fully surrendered disciple, instruction, just do it. But for the conditioned soul, as we progress, well, that knowledge helps just to understand and break down that. So that knowledge, it comes from Guru, who can guide us in that activity. And the important point here is that we have to appreciate the difficulties of understanding action and inaction. Right? And that's what Krishna is in both 16 and 17. He says it twice. And in Prabhupada's purports, if you read his purports, he's speaking very staunchly about the need to follow authorized leadership. Right? He speaks very strongly in these two purports. So, yeah. I added a few other comments, sorry, to your question.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So basically our intelligence is coming in the way
Yes.
of the surrender. And why did Krishna grant us this intelligence? Sometimes I think probably we should have been better off without it, and we would have been already we are supposed to be.
It's nice. That's a brilliant question because that's why Krishna tells Uddhavji in the Uddhav Gita, 11th canto Srimad Bhagavatam, he says that, now that you've acquired knowledge of me and surrender, you should renounce all your gyan. Renounce all of it. So what the Krishna bestows intelligence upon us to help us break our false ego. Right? So in order to analyze and decipher and understand this Shastra, Krishna is blessing us with the intelligence to be able to understand this. So it is a blessing by Krishna, because without it, our false ego may not be broken. But ultimately, one realizes that actually this intelligence can get in the way, because then we start to overthink, overanalyze, and be, we can, start to have too many doubt, right? Like there's a fine line, and we see this in the illiterate Brahmana who is studying Bhagavad Gita. How much intelligence he had by our external vision. Yet he had the full, perfect knowledge because he was fully surrendered to the order of his Guru. He didn't say, but Guru, I can't read Bhagavad Gita. Give me something else to do. He just did it. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu bestowed the greatest of blessing upon him by asking him, what are you doing, my dear Brahmana? Right? So, so what we want to do is use our intelligently. Use it to acquire information, to break our false ego, but use it to the point where we can have faith in following Arjuna's footsteps. Just do. Right? So that is it is a blessing and also an impediment ultimately. It is both. So let us, with intelligence, use it as a blessing and not let it get in the way of our progress in devotional service. That's the aspect of intelligence we want to use. Because ultimately that material intelligence becomes spiritual intelligence. And who is more intelligent than Mother Yashoda? Who is more intelligent than the gopis of Vrindavan? Who is more intelligent than Nanda Baba? Nobody.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Well, if not, thank you very much, and we'll discuss again a few more verses in chapter 4 next week. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. And